Steve, if I could share a personal story with you, because I think it's quite relevant to what you believe and the experience that I've had. Steve, I have in the past, I can actually talk about my most recent, most successful company. It's called Digital Kung Fu. So we're a pipeline generation business for tech companies, Microsoft, Oracle, IBM, all these guys. And what actually happened was when we pivoted towards the problem, like I guess maybe if I can go back, I was super passionate, right? I was like so passionate about founding companies. I still am to this day. I love like just starting something new and writing copy for web pages. It's crazy, but I love that because it's brand new and you get excited about that thing. And then inevitably what you have to do is try and figure out, well, there's a vision for the thing, but actually that might not be what the market is actually looking to buy. And so you have to pivot to the problem. And so what I've heard on this podcast and what other entrepreneurs in my network have experienced and myself personally is that sometimes, Steve, when you pivot to a new problem, it's actually a problem that you don't like solving. And so what happens is that, or in my experience, the worst thing that I can own is a business or an asset that I hate. And, it's like, oh, God, I don't have to get out of bed today, So I'd love to maybe get you to paint a picture on this. Like, how do we avoid this? Like, when do we pull the plug on the vision and say, hey, I'm going to pump the brakes on this one? Or when do we go, I'm a capitalist. I'm just going to do this thing anyway. I don't care how much it sucks.
Well, it's very funny you say that, but the largest crater I had was for a company I started, and 6 months into it, I realized I hated my customers. And no, seriously, I had spent my career working on fairly high-tech products, I did 2 semiconductor companies, supercomputers, enterprise software, and 6 months into this company, I was the CEO of a video game company selling to 14-year-old boys who wanted to kill stuff. And I realized, what the hell? I used to be a 14-year-old boy, but I was just selling to literally rocket scientists with PhDs at Boeing, the last company. And I have to tell you, just from personal experience and your conversation, your introduction, is that the minute you wake up hating your customers or not liking them, you ought to update your resume and leave, because that has a set of interesting effects. It's not only do you grudgingly get out of bed, you implicitly don't want to talk to them a lot. That is, you're not enjoying that interaction. And when you stop enjoying that interaction, you stop hearing about what they say and what they think and whatever. And that ability to find product market fit radically diminishes because you're getting further and further away from the data. Worse, because you personally won't like it, you'll think you could kind of outsource customer discovery to like a head of sales or head of marketing. And then you'll kind of like, when they bring in bad news, you'll kind of go, oh, they don't just get it yet. And the thing ends up in a death spiral. So from personal experience, if you can, I would remember that founders get multiple shots at the goal. We have a special word for a failed entrepreneur when you're an innovation cluster. Do you know what that name is? What the word is for failed entrepreneur?
No.
Experienced.
Oh, really?
Think about it. It's a big idea that in innovation clusters, not every place in the world, but places that value innovators and founders and fund them, et cetera. If you have an honest failure, you haven't shamed your family or your community, or they're not going to come after you with baseball bats to break your kneecaps to pay back the money. They'll fund you again. I mean, that's why in innovation clusters, great founders get to do multiple startups, not just one. And then if you fail, like they ask you when you're having your first coffee after your company's cratered or you left, so what are you going to do next? Instead of like, you owe me the money back. That's a big idea. And the reason why I'm saying that is that should make founders a little more invulnerable when they're thinking about, is this the wrong thing to do, or should I shut this down? That is, instead of saying this is my only thing in my entire life, you should realize that this may not work. Most startups actually fail, unlike the great war stories and great heroes we write about, et cetera. No one would tune into podcasts that say, well, let me tell you about the 700 failures this week. but that's true. And so to answer your question, you have to figure out personally what your stamina time frame is. Mine happened to be 3.5 years. That is, I would stick it out, that long. And nowadays I see my students going, "Are you out of your mind? Mine's 18 months." And there is kind of a minimum. I mean, leaving a job or leaving your own company after a year or two. But after that, if you tried your best, you know what? It's time to do something else. Either give the money back, or find a new CEO, or just, talk to your investors or whatever. On the other hand, I've worked with someone in a previous company who went off and, stuck at it for 12 years. We called him the Flying Dutchman of Silicon Valley. Until, in fact, we were all felt sorry for him. I mean, he had a company of like 400 people, and then he got it down to just him and his wife and his patents, until one day I was reading the Intel annual report, and there was a footnote that said patent settlement for MicroUnity, $545 million. He had sued Intel, and after 12 years, he actually made $500 million. But I got to tell you, in that time, I did 4 startups. And I wouldn't have traded my experience with his, even though he made, 10x more money, because he had a miserable time for 9 of those 12 years, where I just had an enormous adventure. So the answer to your short question was, it depends. You just can't cut and run. But there's life isn't fun if you have to get up and drag yourself into work, particularly if you're an entrepreneur. Did I answer your question?
You did very well.